Please be seated. Proceedings are resumed. Before we took the break, a matter arose as to the laying of a letter in question, which was said to have an element of legal attorney-client privilege. I have taken advice, and my decision is as follows: that our standing orders are silent on the matter. We've looked at Erskine May, pages 445 to 447, and found that there was little assistance as it speaks to where the government is required to lay documents during the course of a debate. However, I noted on page 447, paragraph 2, which states as follows, that there is nothing preventing any member from citing documents in their possessions, both public and private, which are not before the House, even though the House will not be able to form correct judgment from partial extracts. The principle of legal privilege has no formal application in parliamentary privilege. However, the House should note that there is an Australian convention that once the House has been notified of legal privilege or public interest immunity, that the Parliament usually pay due regard to such convention. The Chair would implore the member to take note of the Australian Convention and would respectfully ask if due regard would be paid to any possible fallout. But having said that, I have no jurisdiction to stop any member from laying it on the floor of this House. Recognize the Honourable Attorney General.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. Just by way of amplification, if I will, two things. One, the convention is, I think, more universal, but is found in the document relating to the Australian Parliament, hence the reference to Australia. And just a point of law, really, which is, you correctly mentioned about the issue of the application of the privilege. In the factual context of what happened here is a different situation in the sense that we do have Section 9 of Legislative Assembly's Immunities, Powers and Privileges Law. But what transpired here, apparently, as I understand it, is that the document itself was disclosed in the context of a committee hearing. Because we're already in the position of the House is already seized of the matter. And although there was some attempt to try and retrieve the document, the fact is that that was obviously not successful. So where it is already in the domain of the House, clearly the House cannot be injuncted, and so it's at liberty to make whatever use of it they would like to. Although the usual, as you say, convention is that where there's the sort of privilege and public interest immunity, those are usually observed. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Attorney General, for that further elucidation. It is on that basis that I, through the process of tautological reason, came to this conclusion. It's past the hour of interruption, so I would now recognize the Honourable Premier to move the suspension of 10-2 if that's the desire of the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Order 10-2 in order that the business of the House may continue beyond the hour of interruption. I should indicate, though, Madam Speaker, to the House that given the time, we will not get to the private members' motions, and that at the appropriate opportunity, I will move that they be carried over to the next meeting of the House, as the House will adjourn this evening.
The question is that Standing Order 10-2 be suspended. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, Standing Order 10-2 is suspended. There was a motion on the floor. That motion can now continue. That we've finished with the motion for the interruption.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I shall not be too long here on this point. Madam Speaker, in
I'm just being reminded that there were some other documents that you indicated you wanted to lay. I need to order that those documents have been laid on the table and circulated. And before you continue referring to that document, if it's your intention to lay it on the table, you would need to do it at this juncture.
Madam Speaker, I will lay it, but at a point. Okay, that's the one that you done. Yeah, okay. I need this copy. I just get a copy of it. Okay. But I didn't lay them before. You got them, so they're considered laid.
They're laid. I just had to order it, which I just did.
Bring that copy back. Madam Speaker, the motion has nothing to do with any kind of retribution as imputed by the Premier. However, Madam Speaker, we ought to be concerned, though, that all I have produced leads to breaches of duties as regards the law of the Airports Authority. And that letter shows, the letter that in question, which I will lay in a minute and read in a minute, and that it shows that when the evidence given to us said that board members were not involved with staff matters, that evidence I tabled earlier shows they were. That when evidence given to us that board members were not involved in administrative matters, evidence show that they even had signing authority on the authority's bank account. When that evidence given to us about the disciplinary matters, which is an administrative responsibility, they were less than forthright. The letter we all had, the chairman told the CEO, the chairman of the board told the CEO that it would be disproportionate to dismiss Mr. Watler, and that he had been approached by his associates who requested that board members intervene in the disciplinary process in order to reinstate Mr. Watler. All that amounted to serious interference in the administrative responsibilities of the airport, breach of fiduciary duty in the part of the board, and possible abuse of office in the context of Section 17 of the anti-corruption law. Yes, they ought to be concerned. There's no retribution. He talks about members of the present board. The past board, as I said, Mr. Richard Arch, a former member of this house, upstanding citizen here in Georgetown and these islands. You had the former collector of customs. One of the members that he said is on it now, Mr. Bruce Smith, he was there as well. There were people from Cayman there, a former fireman who led the Cayman Fire Brigade, I call it, up there. And other members who also had to face the criticisms and exposure by the press because of what the Auditor General did and the complaints made by people who wanted to see the board disgraced. Madam Speaker, I understand, and I knew from expressions, and you could test the feelings of members that they're not going to support this. I know that. They talk about propriety. They talk about good governance. All of them. When it came to light, Madam Speaker, that there was the matter connecting to the housing board, the board was changed by the government. That was the morally correct procedure. That was because we cared about the good governance that the opposition was saying we lacked and that they demanded of us. So justice had to take its course. Now, why don't the premier be the person who wants to be morally correct, who wants to see good governance really prevail? Why? Why not? But no, then he must be the one who is opposite of good governance and wants a justice hammered until there's only people of their liking that exist. They're not going to send this to any committee. I understand that. But the board needs to face the consequences of interference. They should be disbanded and a new board appointed. Madam Speaker, in closing, the evidence leads to abuse of process interference by the board. The only way that members here should honestly want to get all their facts of this is to go to the privilege committee. Every one of them on that side that wants to vote against this. The only way that they can be fair, the only way that they can be morally correct is to send this matter to the privilege committee. So now, no, not yet. I'm going to lay this letter, Madam Speaker. I heard what everybody said. I heard what the Honorable Attorney General say, and I understand your ruling. Madam Speaker, and you are not preventing me, in fact. Madam Speaker, I've thought about this. I'm not here to hide for anyone. Too much of all these other things have been done to people around here now. Madam Speaker, a simple process was taken by the Premier for him to upstage the Minister of Finance, and he is speaking and closing debates on a very important convention in this House. And I raised that I paid for it myself. Get a ruling, and one that included every possible parliament you could think of in the Commonwealth of Substance. Everyone. Which said that that process is wrong. But he still do it. But he would try to curtail me, laying this where, Madam Speaker, it brings to light exactly what I'm saying. And so, Madam Speaker, I want the sides to lay this letter on the table. And what is most funny about this, Madam Speaker, while we there was taken back by the chairman because, he wanted to keep the peace. The chairman of the Finance Committee, that is. He wanted to try to keep the peace. But I think they kind of frightened him a little bit too. But he wanted to keep the peace. And every one of us gave back our letter. Everyone. But yet the press had one on the radio. How come? I'm going to ask the Sarge this. It's out there in the public, and I quite understood from the time that the chairman of the board of the airport brought the letter, although they say it didn't exist. They were lying about it. or telling untruth about it. So what? The letter did not exist, but the letter existed. And he should have said there and then, but once he brought it, that privilege disappears. So, Madam Speaker, this is the famous letter. So, Mr. Kirkland Nixon, Chairman of the Board of Directors, Cayman Islands Airports Authority. There, Mr. Nixon, Cayman Islands Airport Authority, the authority.
Mr. Leader of the Opposition, before you read it, you attempted to lay it, so ordered.
Thank you,
Please
Madam.
continue.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Speaker. As you are aware, the Information Systems Manager, Mr. Julian Watler, has been suspended from work pending the conclusion of an investigation into several matters of concern in relation to his conduct at the authority. During the course of the investigation, Mr. Watler invited Mr. Andrew McLaughlin to accompany him to the disciplinary meeting as his witness to the hearing. The investigation has now been concluded, and Mr. Kenneth McCoy's conclusion as acting Chief Executive Officer is that Mr. Watler must be dismissed for gross misconduct. However, Mr. Watler has been informed on a without prejudice basis that if he does not tender his resignation on or before the 4th of December 2013, he will be dismissed summarily. And by the way, Madam Speaker, this letter is dated the 4th of December 2013. So the day that he was supposed to go, that's what they're saying. The letter continues. It is our understanding that Mr. McCoy will be on leave for most of December 2013, and consequently, Mr. McLaughlin has been appointed acting Chief Executive Officer from the 2nd December 2013. The purpose of this letter is to establish how the authority may conclude the disciplinary process in relation to Mr. Watler. In view of the conflict that arises from Mr. McLaughlin's involvement at the disciplinary hearing, we strongly recommend that Mr. McLaughlin should not have any further involvement in the disciplinary process. In the event that Mr. McLaughlin does communicate the decision that has been taken, Mr. Watler would have a good arguable case that the disciplinary process was unfair. On the other hand, if a decision is made that departs from Mr. McCoy's decision to dismiss for gross misconduct, the authority could be criticized for such a change of approach unless it is able to justify its decision. Bearing in mind Section 4.4 of the Airport Authority Law 2005 revision that allows the board to appoint a senior employee of the authority to discharge the function of the Chief Executive Officer, in this case, the acting Chief Executive Officer, in his absence, I should be grateful if you would clarify whether the board's decision is that Mr. McCoy is to continue to act as acting Chief Executive Officer and Mr. McLaughlin's appointment is to provide cover until Mr. McCoy's return to office. If that is the case, Mr. McCoy may conclude the disciplinary process on this matter, and the issue I have referred to above will simply fall away. If, on the other hand, it is the board's intention for Mr. McLaughlin to become the acting CEO, further consideration needs to be given to mitigate the conflict of interest that arises out of Mr. McLaughlin's involvement in this matter. On a separate but related matter, whilst Mr. McCoy was instructing us to offer Mr. Watler the opportunity to resign, he informed us that on the 21st of November 2013, at a meeting between himself, Mr. Wayne DeCosta, Mr. Tom Guyton, and yourself, Mr. Guyton told Mr. McCoy that any decision to dismiss Mr. Watler would not be supported by the board, and further, that any appeal by Mr. Watler would be upheld on the basis of insufficient evidence and that the dismissal would be disproportionate. He further informs us that after that meeting, you confirmed to Mr. McCoy that it would be disproportionate to dismiss Mr. Watler and that you had been approached by your associates in courts who requested that board members intervene in the disciplinary process in order to reinstate Mr. Watler. As attorney for the CIAA, we are duty bound to inform you that if Mr. McCoy's account set out above is accurate, it could give rise to a number of potentially serious issues, including, but not necessarily limited to, 1, irregularities in the disciplinary process on any subsequent appeal, 2, breach of fiduciary duties on the part of the affected members of the board, and 3, a possible allegation of abuse of office in the context of Section 17 of the Anti-Corruption Law 2008. We have, of course, not formed any view of the accuracy or otherwise of Mr. McCoy's account. However, if you would like us to provide any advice on this particular matter, we would need to have written instructions as to the contents of any conversations between members of the board and Mr. McCoy in relation to these issues. Yours sincerely, Edwin Gomez, Rich, and Conley. That's the letter that they've tried so hard to keep from going in the public domain when in fact it's out there already. But what does this show us? What does it show us? Nothing? Oh, I see the expression say it doesn't show them anything. Of course it doesn't, because they have to follow the party rule. The party rule means that the premier have said he's not supporting this. He don't want this to go to the privileged committee. They don't want this extrapolated by the public. They don't want anybody to be questioned as to the accuracy. They don't want none of this, even though emails, the board minutes that I have produced here and tabled shows otherwise. So now, let me ask each member of this honorable house, if the porn matter or some kind of other kind of abuse had been committed by any poor person in Georgetown or Bordentown or East End or North Side or Cayman Brack or West Bay, you vote against the motion for a committee. Would you vote for a motion against the committee, or to appoint a committee where evidence could clear those persons? If it were the other way around, what would you do? What would you do? Whether it's one of your own constituents, what would you do? Oh, you would leave it. You would leave it. We don't need to do that for those people. That would be your attitude. I can tell every poor Caymanian in these islands that if this evidence were against them or their child, there would be no hesitation to perform some kind of sanction on them, to embarrass them, to make them spend money, to take them to court. There would be some kind of sanction against the poor people and others that the government is not satisfied with. It would be sanctions against them. So, the elected members of this legislature ought to bear that in mind. Are they? Madam Speaker, I can't take this any further because it's gone way beyond where I asked that it should go. I said, merely move the motion, I introduce the motion, and send it to the Privilege Committee where they would speak to the board and to staff members, and they would call their witnesses. No, they don't want that. And you know what? There's going to be nothing done by the board according to what the discourse and the attempts at defense by the premier this morning. If this was some poor Caymanian, I think he would do the same thing. He would sanction them.
The question is that be it therefore resolved that the matter of the Board of the Airport Authority's activity relating to the involvement of the porn matter and suspension of the information technological manager and the subsequent retirement of the acting chief executive officer and the board's evidence to the Finance Committee on Friday, 20th June 2014, be referred to the Privilege Committee of the Honorable Legislative Assembly as indicated on Friday, 20th June 2014 by the Honorable Attorney General, the legal advisor of the Legislative Assembly. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no.
No.
I believe the noes have it.
Oh, yes. Can I have a division, Madam Speaker?
Madam Clerk.
Honorable Alden McLaughlin,
No.
Honorable Moses Kekernel, Honorable Kurt Tibbetts,
No.
Honorable Osborne Bodden,
No.
Honorable Wayne Panton,
No.
Honorable Marco Archer,
No.
Honorable Tara Rivers,
Madam Speaker, due to official commitments in my capacity of Minister of Education during this time, I was not at Finance Committee on the 19th and 20th of June when this matter was before the committee. So therefore, I respectfully abstain from the vote at this time.
Honorable Anthony Eden,
Madam Speaker, as I dealt with this motion in its initial stage as Deputy Speaker, I will abstain.
Mr. Winston Connolly,
No.
Mr. Roy McTaggart,
No.
Mr. Joseph Hugh,
No.
Mr. Alva Saku,
No.
Honorable McKeeva Bush,
Aye.
Mr. Borny Bush,
Aye.
Captain Eugene
Aye.
Captain Eugene Eubanks. Sorry. Mr. Ezra Miller, Mr. Orden McLean,
Abstain.
The results of the divisions are as follows: 3 ayes, 9 noes, 2 abstentions, and 3 absentees. I'm just reading what I see before me. Sorry. Out of the abundance of caution, let me repeat the results of the division. 3 ayes, 9 noes, 3 abstentions, 2 absentees. The noes have it. Accordingly, the motion has failed.
Madam Speaker, as indicated, I rise to present a motion under Standing Order 11.1 and 2.
I recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Under Standing Order 11.1.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move private members' motion under Standing Order 11.1 and 2. Do I move to read the motion?
Yes, please proceed with moving it, and then you'll have a
Thank you,
seconder.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, whereas the private members' motion under Standing Order 11 in Cayman Brack at the last meeting of the Honorable Legislative Assembly agreed that all such marina projects in Cayman Brack be given similar treatment. And whereas the developers of the Dilbert's Marina has now reached crisis stage and is desirous more than ever to develop their marina facilitating the Alexander Hotel. Be it therefore resolved that this Honorable Legislative Assembly agrees that the marina project in Cayman Brac known as the Dilbert Marina, inclusive of an appropriate channel, be given the same agreement and approval to be developed as the two marinas approved by the Cabinet of the Cayman Islands on May 27, 2014, one on the north side of Cayman Brac and one on the south side of Cayman Brac.
Is there a seconder to the motion?
I beg to second the motion.
Recognize Honorable Leader of the Opposition. The motion has been duly moved. It's now open for debate.
Madam Speaker, this matter of the Dilbert's Marina, commonly called by me at least the Dilbert's Marina, has gained much attention. Also, the plight and closure of the Alexander Hotel have gained public attention. They have both gained much publicity, and rightly so. The Dilbert's investment in the Alexander Hotel has been a family pride, an investment of hard-earned money by that family, that Caymanian family. The hotel was built between 2005 and 2009. When it was developed, it was with the support of the then government. When I say that, they lauded the support. I don't think they've done anything else but that. The then government, however, promised to do all they could to assist with the overwhelming stench coming from the pond that is adjacent to the hotel's property. And Madam Speaker, I remember clearly when, after the elections, I opened the hotel in 2009 as the then minister responsible for tourism, also the leader of the government at the time. I made a commitment along with Mr. Moses Kirkconnell, MLA for Cayman Brac at the time, who is now the current Deputy Premier and Minister of Tourism. We made a commitment to the Dilbert's family to support any action to address the matter of the pond. Madam Speaker, I remember that clearly, and perhaps the Speaker would remember because the Speaker was then the Minister for the district administration and was there at the opening and heard us speak to those matters. The Deputy Premier now, the Minister of Tourism, still claims that he's in support of that action. We do know, Madam Speaker, that between 2009 and 2012, somewhere about there, between there were actions taken to address the matter of the pond. The procedure used did not suffice to stop the stench, which continued to cause devastation to the hotel property and its functioning. Since 2009, Madam Speaker, we as a government removed the designation that was on that pond about it being some kind of bird sanctuary, Madam Speaker, where they were claiming that migratory birds were coming there. You go there, Madam Speaker, and I don't know, I visited several times of the year, and I don't see no crowd of birds, no flock of birds being there. I didn't see any. Saw a few way up on the other end, way up on the other end. That's a few. different birds swimming around there. But they're all weather birds. They will be there anyway. So, Madam Speaker, we removed our designation, and the Dilbert family and others, I believe at the time, made a proposal for a marina to government. And the government then, Madam Speaker, gave some kind of half-hearted support. However, Madam Speaker, it appears that there was those in government who undermined the effort and did not offer their support. That's what it seems like to me. Madam Speaker, as a staunch advocate for development to take place in these islands and a supporter of the District of Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, I have always pushed and tried to support whatever I could. In the face of money being spent by the government here for Cayman Brac, I have done whatever I could. And there are some milestones that I have made in the District of Cayman Brac. I recall, Madam Speaker, when I got elected, that no roads were done on the eastern part of the island. Everything was done down on West End and a few other places. And we had to rectify that. I remember that up until I got elected, Madam Speaker, and I was Minister of Health, there were no hearse, no proper burial facilities. People carried caskets in their trucks. And so at least one point some time ago, one such casket fell off the truck, I had heard. Years ago that might have been. Anyway, Madam Speaker, we put those kind of things in place. We finished the hospital. And on, Madam Speaker, the road development, the school fields development, even today, development is going on now up on the bluff, which the present party in power cussed the then minister, made all kind of scandal about it. Now, they're finding a different color sheet to throw over it, but they're giving it some kind of support. But, Madam Speaker, I can look back and say I've done my part to try to help Cayman Brac move forward. Having been elected again, I found that the proposal for the marina was going nowhere, and I was dumbstruck, to say the least, that it wasn't going anywhere, it wasn't doing anything. So, with a meeting going to Cayman Brac, Madam Speaker, and nothing on the agenda for Cayman Brac, nothing, I sought to table a motion in that last meeting of the legislature in Cayman Brac and got the government to agree to a process to form a committee of Brackers who had knowledge of this type of development and knowledge of the Brac's marine environment. It said what should be done. It left the way open for the Dilberts and government to get together, Madam Speaker. But one thing that it did say, Madam Speaker, was that all the motion I'm talking about was that it resolved that all such projects in Cayman Brac be given similar treatment. That's the important, one of the key things. If they failed in the other parts of the resolution to come to any agreement, one thing they could not get out of a government, they could not democratically and honestly, after having made that commitment, get out of that, because they made the commitment. That aspect was not challenged. I know why it wasn't challenged. However, Madam Speaker, the appointment of that committee was not acted upon with the needed speed, from my perspective. I think we all envisioned that the committee would have taken the matter forward expeditiously. That's what the impression I had. In the meantime, however, Madam Speaker, the Cabinet was working on granting approvals for 2 other marinas. Not one, but 2. One on the south side of the west end of Cayman Brac, and the other on the north side of the west end of Cayman Brac. The Cabinet, gave that developer outright permission, in spite of the various absence of the recommendations always used when that and any type of coastal work is applied for. Now, Madam Speaker, as we all recall, the motion passed in that meeting on the BRAC, as I said, says that all such marina projects would be given similar treatment. There is no way that I could imagine that the 2 marinas which we heard knocking around, connecting somehow to the Deputy Premier, would be granted first. There is no way that I could ever imagine that. None. But lo and behold, Madam Speaker, that is what happened. While that is being done, they have gotten their permission. There is still an attempt to besmirch not the project, but even to the Dilbert's name, if you see some of the things that they're saying. There is an attempt to stop the marina from being developed. It is evident, Madam Speaker, that the Department of Environment has thrown away all of their objections of the normal processing of granting such coastal work projects, that they have been objections that they have done over the years. And they have cooperated with the developer of the other 2 marinas on the south of the west end of Cayman Brac and the north of the west end of Cayman Brac. There had to be some cooperation. The only thing that can be said about this, that it is full of cronyism, nepotism, and bad governance. And I think, in the absence of following the motion that we passed in Cayman Brac, it is a travesty of justice. The fact is that the scope of work of the other 2 marinas has a greater impact to the environment than the Dilbert's Marina. The Department of Environment, Madam Speaker, and Cabinet, while not giving support to Dilbert's Marina, has set a dangerous and an outright precedent. It cannot be that one developer can get so much and the other pounced upon and called all kinds of names, while impacts to the environment is taking place by the other 2 marinas. Again, what is good for one can be good for the other one. The North Side Marina, Madam Speaker, and this is what I'm talking about, where the Department of Environment is biased against the Dilbert's Marina. The North Side Marina is a mere couple of hundred of feet away from 3 of Cayman Brac's top dive sites: Captain Keith's Tibbets, Kissimmee, and Buccaneers Reef, I think it is. There's also no breakwater to assist the cemetery. It is not far away from the cemetery. There will be digging of some kind which will affect the cemetery or could affect the cemetery. Also, the North Marina are situated, Madam Speaker, in a marine park. All of these various issues are always the reasons given by the Department of Environment to object strongly to the usual granting of coastal work licenses. This time, they have looked away, turned a blind eye, and they call it good. As I said, I have no problem supporting development of marina, because as everyone knows, I am pro-development. But a government department that cohorts and supports whomever they favor and then object to others doing the same thing or worse, Madam Speaker, I find that type of behavior by a government entity appalling. They're not trying to hide it either. They turn up their noses at the black developers of the Dilbert marinas. The marina on the south side should be seen as equally damaging as that of Dilbert's marina, and worse, if they want to say there's going to be an impact. Dilbert marina sits up there on the rocks, but the one that they're putting in, it sits on the prime beach and tourism resort properties. There will be removal of turtle grass on the south side. It is situated in a sandy area, and it is an area of the mean turtle nesting grounds. One objection from them is that the Dilbert's marina could cause flooding. Don't they think, Madam Speaker, that any weather that's coming in, that the marina south of the west end of Cayman Brac and the marina on the north side of the west end of Cayman Brac have the same possibility to flood? They do. They do. You would think, Madam Speaker, that two marinas will have more devastating possibilities for flooding. Plus, the one on the south side is not too far away from the Captain Charles Kirkconnell International Airport. If I am getting the positions right, it's not that far away. Now, to top it all off, while they are demanding that the Dilbert Marina have an environmental impact study, of which the Dilberts have agreed to pay up to a certain amount for the impact study, at that time, why should the Dilberts Marina have to have an environmental impact study and the other two marinas none? Is that fair? I'm asking you all on that side again. Where is your sense of fairness? They claim that the Department of Environment, Madam Speaker, in their biasness, have said publicly in their documents that they have agreed not to conduct any such study, as they already know that there will not be any negative findings about these other two marinas, and that the Dilberts don't even need to go and do a study, Madam Speaker, although they require it. They don't even need to go to say, don't go because we're not going to agree with you anyway, and you call that fair. That's not what it said? No? Well, when you get up, you can contradict me. You can do that. Can anyone believe that any member of cabinet knows any more about the marine environment than those illustrious sea captains and other senior citizens that were supposed, business people and so on, that were supposed to have been on the committee appointed for the BRAC? Who can say that the Dilbert Marina will have the devastation that the Department of Environment and the ministry responsible for the environment has tried to make up? They've tried to concoct stories about it. That the Department of Environment and the ministry responsible for the environment has tried to say, but not the other two. Where you hear about turtles laying eggs on rocks? Where? I I guess if you listen to them and they could get away with it, they say they want to climb the black cliff and get up there and lay their eggs up there. When will the slave and broker mentality that some deserve everything and others nothing be thrown away? When? When? Madam Speaker, there is a gross injustice in the process, gross indecisions, cronyism, and nepotism. I support anything that can bring revenue, work, and sustainability to Cayman Brac. The hotel is being closed down. 20 people affected, no work. You heard the minister say it's going to have to bring some of them to social services. Whatever I can, I have given my unstinting support to Cayman Brac. But I am way beyond tired now of the self-serving action of some and their cohorts to take all while other persons, rich or poor, how to be treated differently. I don't believe in treating anyone different in any situation, but in these kinds, particularly so. The Dilberts have spent their hard-earned money and have developed a first-class property confirmed by TripAdvisor and others as being a #1 property. They developed what we always envisioned for Cayman Brac would be smaller property with a nice environment, a good ambience, and the right facility for tourists or visitors to want to come and stay. The government are knocking families out of work, and they are knocking them out of their investment in this instance, and his young sons as well. How can we agree to build two and overlook his? How can we? The backbench should understand, Madam Speaker, that what is good for one should be good for all in this instance. With this development, government is not losing any money, as the Dilberts are going to pay, willing to pay for the new construction of the new section of the road, and they're prepared to pay whatever fees leveled at them. As far as I'm concerned, we should be giving them some kind of concession. That's what we should be examining. Surely, if you look at what the other two marinas are paying, they have been given concessionary terms for their development. This cannot be right. Are they not local? What about the families out of work? Social services will have to give them, so the Deputy Premier says. So not only should this backbench, this House agree on this motion, but members here ought to insist that it is acted upon expeditiously so that the hotel can reopen quickly as possible. How much more does the minister think that the island can continue to pour money into Cayman Brac? I'm talking about the minister, the Deputy Premier. How much more? And you're tearing down things that can bring some revenue? Whereas there are things, as I said, developments that can be done to help Brackers help themselves. We are not asking anybody to give him everything. Be understanding. But the shenanigans of the decisions that were taken in the granting of those two marinas, another possibility is lost. Madam Speaker, this thing of where we find excuses to help certain people all around, but more predominantly in Cayman Brac, I see that happening. Help some people, but not others. That has to stop. Same thing I said earlier. Now, you might all disagree with this motion. I hope you can find a good excuse. I know the last one you gave wasn't a good excuse, but I hope that a good excuse can be found. I can't see where you're going to be able to say that what I'm asking is wrong. Can't see. I wait to hear what the minister responsible for the Department of Environment is going to say. Now, I know, according to some of the things that he was saying the other day, you're not going to get any support from him. So I'm not asking that. But I hope that other members here will examine what the cabinet did and all the things surrounding it. Now, if you think that I now got the facts on that too, go ahead. Madam Speaker, I have much more that I will close with. I'm waiting to hear what the minister responsible for the Department of Environment is going to say. But I'm more than tired of their excuses. I'm more than tired of people doing things that really helps them. I mean, look, Madam Speaker, call a spade a spade. While we were talking about that, the ministers got a company that had one of the pieces of property under contract. They said he recused himself. That's what the Minister of the Environment said. I don't know, but the fact is, property is concluded, sale is concluded, that person got their marinas, and the commitment given by this House, which should not be in any shape or form overlooked, sidestepped, kicked out, is now, Madam Speaker, just forgotten. I rest my case until I hear from the minister.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honourable Minister responsible for the environment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there's a sense of deja vu all over again, as Yogi Berra once supposedly said anyway. The government, let me say the ministry, received an application from Mr. Dilbert in connection with his marina proposal late last year. Some weeks following that, I think it's in a region of 3 weeks or so, 2 other applications were received by a company called MMCB Ltd. The applications were processed in accordance with the normal coastal works process and policy, which has been a part of the cabinet and government process, as I understand it, for a very long time now. The marina proposal made by Mr. Dilbert was reviewed. The 2 marina proposals, one on the north side of the west end of Cayman Brac, and one on the south side of the west end of Cayman Brac within Dick Sessinger Bay, were similarly reviewed by the Department of Environment. And I'd like to just be clear, Madam Speaker, the Department of Environment is the advisor to Cabinet in respect of the Coastal Works application process. They review these applications. They consider the impacts. They consider the scale, the scope, the complexity of the proposal. They review the information that's provided. They ask for additional information if that is thought appropriate. And they complete a Coastal Works review, which is sent to Cabinet. That was the process with all three of these marina proposals, if we can just use that term. Madam Speaker, the Dilbert Marina application was considered and received approval in principle by Cabinet on the 25th of March of this year. Madam Speaker, the Coastal Works review, which, by the way, all of these are made public as soon as they're available and delivered to, as soon as they're completed and sent to the ministry, they're made available. We do not hold them back. We do not require the normal FOI or Freedom of Information process. Simply disclosed as a matter of course. Unless there are issues, for example, if there are specific documents, drawings that are sent in, which have some intellectual property value, there are times where we simply get the consent or clarify with the agent or the applicant that they don't have any issue with it was being disclosed. But certainly in terms of the review document, the Coastal Works review document, that is available. Madam Speaker, that approval in principle was made subject to an environmental impact assessment. As members of this House and everyone knows, the rationale behind that was that the government wanted to support the Dilbert's application. The government heard the voices of the people of Cayman Brac who said they wanted to be able to add a marina project like that to the economic drivers in the Brac. So the government felt that is something that we should support. But we had a recommendation from the Department of Environment that it shouldn't be considered because the scope, pardon me one second. The scope, Madam Speaker, the scale of it, and the complexity because it's not, the Coastal Works, let me be clear now, the Coastal Works application is really simply in relation to a channel which is proposed to connect the pond on the interior, saltwater pond, and the ocean. The Coastal Works application is in respect of the channel and through the reef into the marine environment outside. So from the shoreline out, that's what the Coastal Works application deals with. A 700 plus foot channel, 12 feet deep, 100 feet wide, through a marine park on the inside of the reef, which is a replenishment zone, through the fringing protecting reef into a marine park on the outside of the reef is of a scale and scope when you bring in, and that in itself is extremely significant. But when you factor in that it is proposed to also breach the storm ridge and connect into the saltwater pond, which is part of the drainage system on the western end of Cayman Brac, the southwestern side of Cayman Brac. From a combined perspective, that is a scale and scope and added layer of complexity that the DOE felt it was going to be impossible to mitigate extremely negative impacts on the marine parks, on the reef, the inside, the outside. And of course, there were also the issues, concerns about what happens with the sedimentation that's on the inside of the pond. Yes, the proposal is to dredge the pond, which is Crown property. And yes, some of that, or most of that, sedimentation on the west end will be removed. But it got there somehow, Madam Speaker. Whatever generated the sedimentation is a process that will continue. It is part of the drainage system on the west end, southwest side of the Brac. That will continue to generate sedimentation. So there are concerns about what happens with sediment being transferred through this channel system out onto the reef. These all reflected major concerns, which led the Department of Environment to conclude that it was not a project that they could recommend in any way that Cabinet should consider. They also, Madam Speaker, recommended or took the position that an environmental impact assessment would not add anything more to what they understood or what they projected to be the impacts, and from their perspective couldn't provide any mitigating suggestions or mitigation suggestions. So, Madam Speaker, that was the recommendation from the Department of Environment. But because the Cabinet, the government felt that we needed to support the Brac, because Mr. Dilbert had come in and he'd made a presentation which he termed as a rebuttal, because he expressed a strong view that he disagreed with some of the conclusions, or perhaps even all of the conclusions, of the Department of Environment. The Cabinet felt that the only responsible, in the context of wanting to support this, wanting to take it forward, wanting to support the Brac community and additional economic development there, the only way we could do that was by asking for an environmental impact assessment, asking Mr. Dilbert to go through experts to demonstrate that what he was saying was correct, and perhaps that the views and concerns of the Department of Environment were not going to have what they were projecting wasn't going to have the same negative impact. So an environmental impact assessment was requested. That is a normal process, Madam Speaker. That approval was communicated on the 3rd of April to Mr. Dilbert by letter from the ministry. Mr. Dilbert was asked to confirm to us within 21 days that he or essentially what his intentions were. Because, Madam Speaker, there had been discussions all along with Mr. Dilbert, informal discussions. Mr. Dilbert had indicated that he wasn't going to pay for an environmental impact assessment because he thought the cost was going to be too great. And in fact, that was one of the things that the Department of Environment also concluded. They thought it was going to cost too much for the benefit that it was going to bring to the issue. They thought that they could accurately predict that the damage was going to be too great and there would be no net benefits. Madam Speaker, there was no response to the letter of April 3rd. We then have LA in the BRAC, and the Leader of the Opposition brings his motion, his surprise motion, demanding that this BRAC Environmental Oversight Committee be created and demanding that the House consider supporting this marina. Madam Speaker, the Cabinet formed this BRAC Environmental Oversight Committee. That committee is essentially going to be functioning as an oversight committee in conjunction with the Environmental Assessment Board, which normally works with the developers' consultants to work out the terms of engagement for an environmental impact assessment. Madam Speaker, there was never going to be an opportunity to complete an environmental impact assessment within 8 weeks. But we could certainly get this committee set up, get it established, and that has certainly happened. And here we are today again. Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition brings the same sort of motion as he did last time. In the intervening period, Madam Speaker, and this is weeks after the consideration was given by Cabinet to the Dilbert Marina application. The other two applications for MMCB Ltd, the north side and the south side, were considered in accordance with the review and the recommendations from the Department of Environment. And they were given approvals in accordance with the recommendations of the Department of Environment. They did not have environmental impact assessments recommended, Madam Speaker, because to suggest that they're the same, to suggest that the north side MMCB marina and the south side MMCB marina is the same and has the same characteristics as the Dilbert application is a complete stretch, an absolute misrepresentation. The Department of Environment understands, in relation to the North Coast Marina, Madam Speaker, it understands what's involved there. The footprint, and I hasten to repeat this now, the footprint of the impact and the footprint of exactly what the application is that the coastal works application involves is this 144-foot long channel. It has nothing to do with the interior basin, which may be excavated onshore. That is dealt with by planning in Cayman Brac. That's dealt with by the Development and Control Board in Cayman Brac. So we're comparing the three coastal works applications. The North Coast Marina, there's a channel which is has a footprint of 144 feet in length, 32 feet in width, and it goes out to a bottom depth of 11 feet. Now the water going up to the shore is probably somewhere in the region of 4 to 5 feet. So the amount of excavation is not the 144 feet by 12 feet, or by 11 feet, and by 32 feet. It is actually, in terms of cubic feet, somewhere around 811 cubic yards. Now, Madam Speaker, in relation to the Dilbert application for that channel, the department asked for, in its initial meeting with the agent for the applicant, the department asked for a bathymetric survey and several other bits of data and analysis. I am told that the agent for the applicant at that time indicated that they would not be supplied, they would not be forthcoming. The other two applications certainly had all of that information, very complete applications. And by the way, Madam Chair, let me make it very, Madam Speaker, I apologize. Let me make it very clear, there was absolutely no coaching or cooperation, as the leader of the opposition has suggested. The applications were submitted and dealt with. In fact, there was probably more discussions between government and DOE and the Dilberts than the other two. But when we're comparing the North Coast Marina for MMCB LTD as against the Dilbert application, just in terms of volume of excavation, we're looking at hundreds of % difference in scale and scope. The information that I have is that it's somewhere around, I think it's around 15 or 16,000 cubic yards of material. Madam Speaker, that could actually increase quite significantly. It could go up to 31,000, because what hasn't been provided is the bathymetry, which shows the average water depth through which this channel is going to be dug. Now, we do know, Madam Speaker, that the water depth out from the shoreline to the reef there is fairly limited. It is relatively shallow water. I think Madam Speaker would certainly know that for herself. But in terms of the calculation of this volume, a depth of 6 feet has been assumed because we don't have the bathymetric analysis or survey. So we can't calculate exactly what it would be. So we're looking at somewhere around 16,000 to 30,000+ potentially cubic yards of material, compared to 811 cubic yards for the North Coast Marina. Another point in respect of the North Coast Marina, Madam Speaker, is that the Department of Environment fully understands what kind of impact a relatively small channel like that will involve on the seabed and the marine life in that area. It has had lots of experience with that. In addition, it has had lots of experience where a small channel like that has connected into an interior basin which has been excavated. It understands very well what the impact of that will be over time because it has had the opportunity to see that in practice, in reality. For example, Madam Speaker, there is an interior marine basin which was excavated in Northwest Point, just down from the turtle farm, just to the south of the turtle farm. That is a marine basin which was excavated. A boat ramp was built in there. There was a channel going out through the iron shore. All of that is a good example, and that's been there for at least 25 years, Madam Speaker. So that they know exactly what that involves. They have seen over time what that involves. So they were comfortable with being able to predict what is going to happen to that kind of, to an environment created with those kind of circumstances. So to suggest, Madam Speaker, that the North Coast Marina is the same as the Dilbert Marina, or the same as even the same as the MMCB South Coast Marina is wrong. Madam Speaker, the South Coast Marina for MMCB is much larger in scale and scope than the North Coast Marina. It is within the reef protected bay. It is 2/3 of the footprint of that proposed bay, that area. 2/3 of that is within an area which has previously been dredged in the 1980s and 1990s. So, Madam Speaker, and the work that was done around there certainly had impacts all around, even the area that wasn't directly dredged within this proposed basin footprint for the Southside Marina had significant impacts during the work that was done for the dredging in the 1980s and 1990s. So that did not involve a pristine marine environment. In addition, that project proposed a depth of 8 feet. The average water depth in that area is in the region of 4 to 5 feet. I think it varies from around 3.5 to 4 feet out to 7.5 feet, Madam Speaker. So the amount of material that may be removed there is anticipated to be somewhere in the region of 10,000 cubic yards of mostly sand material. There are some areas of grass beds which will be impacted, Madam Speaker, but the Department of Environment felt that it could anticipate the kinds of impacts, it could project what was going to happen, it could suggest appropriate methods to mitigate those impacts within a confined lagoon which has a fringing reef, no direct access to the ocean at that point. And they would understand exactly what was likely to happen, and they could determine within their own knowledge, within their own experience, with the resources they have, the capability they have, what the impacts would be, as I said, and what mitigation steps and actions were appropriate. So, Madam Speaker, you have the North Coast Marina, which doesn't compare at all, other than in respect of one thing: it is on the edge of a marine park. But in terms of its impact, well understood, relatively minor. Obviously, the channel would have a permanent impact there, but the impact and the scale and the scope is going to be relatively minor and predictable. So they didn't require an environmental impact in respect of that. Now, I've heard discussions on the radio, for example, Madam Speaker, where it says, well, the volume taking into account the interior basin plus the channel is the same as the volume for the Dilbert channel proposal. But that's apples and oranges. That you cannot include the interior basin. That's not a part of the application. What is a part of the application demonstrates that the North Coast Marina is substantially smaller in scope and scale than the Dilbert proposal. Now, Madam Speaker, there is a big difference, obviously, between the South Side application as well as, there's a big difference between the South Side MMCB LTD application and the Dilbert application. The volume is likely to be half as much, and it is in an area that is reef protected, so there's no proposal to go through the reef. It is in an area that has been dredged already. It is part of the current existing navigation channel through the Sound. And as I said, Madam Speaker, the DOE feels that it is not dissimilar to other applications that have been dealt with in Cayman, for example, which they understand what the impacts are, and they can predict and they can mitigate. So, for example, the application requested that dredging be allowed up to the edge of the shoreline, essentially up to the edge of the beach. The recommendation from the Department of Environment was that dredging not be allowed to go closer than 50 feet to the beach, so that the fringing seagrass beds along the beach be retained to minimize any risk of any kind of significant beach erosion happening. That was a part of the approval that was given. Madam Speaker, I think what I have outlined demonstrates that within the first year of this government being in office, we considered the application from Mr. Dilbert. We supported the application by giving him an approval in principle to move forward subject to the environmental impact assessment in the circumstances, because Cabinet felt that it needed that analysis in order to properly make a responsible decision for the people of this country. We are the guardians of the natural assets of this country, Madam Speaker. And when we consider things like this, we consider applications like this, we have to balance the benefits of those applications, the anticipated benefits, against the anticipated negatives. Cabinet, in the circumstances, was not in a position to make a decision in respect of that. It needed an environmental impact assessment to be carried out to demonstrate either that the Department of Environment was correct and that there's no way to mitigate these damages and they were on a scale which was unacceptable, or that the applicant, Mr. Dilbert, was right and they were not going to be as serious as first thought, and there would perhaps be ways to mitigate them. We took that forward, Madam Speaker. Now, the Leader of the Opposition had something like 1,200 days in office when he was supporting this application, he says. And what did he do for 1,200 days? All he managed to do was delist the pond from being a protected pond under the Animals Law. He did nothing else. And then he comes in, there's a proper process being followed by Cabinet.
Jump in with both feet.
There is
so I can beat you good.
All departments are following the appropriate process, trying to do the right thing, trying to support the people in the BRAC, trying to support the applicant, and he does nothing but come along with a motion to try to get the House to obviate the proper process, the agreed process, the process that has been followed for years, try to completely undermine that, undercut it, truncate it, throw it out the window.
Complete the process. You have never say that. Huh? You really have never say that, but you'll say anything.
Madam Speaker, it amazes me that someone like the minister from the BRAC, the deputy premier, who has been such an advocate for the BRAC, such an advocate for the application brought by Mr. Dilbert, is now in a situation where he is berated by the Leader of the Opposition and others, and all sorts of castigations and allegations are made. This is a man that, from an unqualified, unmitigated perspective, supported something happening for the applicant and for the people in the BRAC. And it is incredible that we can be in a position where, having gone through all the proper process, Madam Speaker, we have what I consider personally as an abuse going on by the Leader of the Opposition, and the kinds of personal attacks being brought against the Deputy Premier in these circumstances. It's absolutely astonishing. Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition talks about cronyism and nepotism and all sorts of stuff. Well, I know he's very familiar with all of that, but I'd like him to show me exactly where that is in this whole process.
You wouldn't see.
Well,
You wouldn't see.
yeah, maybe. But let me tell you,
You wouldn't see.
I haven't seen anything.
I know.
Let's keep
sorry.
the comments to the chair, members.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My apologies.
Yeah. Sit down. You haven't said anything.
Madam Speaker,
Leader of the Opposition, that was meant for both members.
Yeah, I know. But you would know that there's been a lot of repartee having going on in this place, Madam Speaker. But I'll try to contain myself till I get up.
I know when you try hard, so I wouldn't expect any less at this late hour.
But he needs to be contradicted.
Leader of the Opposition, you have a right of reply.
Oh, I'm going to do that.
Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition spent sometime also claiming that the north and south side marina can cause more flooding than the Dilbert marina. Madam Speaker, first of all, the north side marina proposal is within the bay. There is no cutting of the beach. There is no cutting of the reef. There's no lowering of the storm ridge in that area. So I am mystified as to how he suggests that somehow that would contribute to an issue of or concern of flooding. The North Coast Marina, Madam Speaker, is within a marina basin within the shoreline and out through this channel, which is the channel only, which is a part of the Coastal Works application. Now, there may be overtopping of the iron shore there when there is inclement weather. But that is certainly not going to cause more flooding because the marina basin on the inside can't cause any more flooding because it doesn't breach the storm ridge. It doesn't breach it at all. In fact, it might mitigate against flooding from inclement weather and wave action because the waves will be coming in and rolling into the marina basin at most. There is no breaching of the storm ridge. The road, which I think everybody has been to the Brack and understands and knows where the road is, and that's where the essential storm ridge is on the north side. And that is hundreds and hundreds of feet back from where this marina basin is proposed to be located. So a suggestion that somehow the north and south marina is going to cause more flooding or as much flooding as the concerns reflected in the Dilbert proposal is ludicrous. Now, I know the member, Madam Speaker, has to find something to say, but let's try to make it something which is even potentially a concern, not just the most far-fetched, far-out, ridiculous speculation. On the other hand, Madam Speaker, the concern in relation to the Dilbert Marina proposal, the channel, is very legitimate. You have a channel that's going to go out through the reef. It's at least 700 feet, perhaps longer, because we don't have the specific data and information. It's going to be 12 feet deep, 100 feet wide. There will be a breakwater on the edge of the channel, starting just inside the reef and going out, or perhaps going a bit further in. Not sure, because we don't have the exact specifications or dimensions or structural analysis provided for this breakwater. And that is another very critical thing, Madam Speaker. Another very critical bit of information that we do not have. If this channel is built and the breakwater is put in, and the breakwater was to fail, it has lost its purpose. You have breakwater pieces, you have pieces of material that were forming part of this breakwater, which can travel out over the reef, down the shore, because this is all exposed to open ocean energy. And I know the sea captains and the people in the Brack, I don't have to tell them about open ocean energy.
You can't tell them that. You don't know about sea. We went.
Madam Speaker, the breakwater in and of itself is something that is very critical to ensure that would have a proper structural analysis. It's got to be able to dissipate energy. It's got to be able to block energy coming into the mouth of the channel so that the mouth of the channel is navigable. We don't know. The applicant in his application at one point proposed that this breakwater was going to be built out of material from the dredging. of the channel. Now, Madam Speaker, the experience of the Department of Environment, particularly after hurricanes like Ivan, there are aerial photographs which demonstrate that the few loose material breakwaters, rocks capped with concrete that have been built around Grand Cayman all failed because of the ocean energy. The rocks were scattered, the breakwater was destroyed. That is indicative of the concern in relation to ensuring that the breakwater would be properly structured, be properly engineered. And Madam Speaker, that information hasn't been provided, but all of that is just another part of what would be necessary as part of the environmental impact assessment. And that is why the environmental impact assessment is something that Cabinet felt was needed. As much as Cabinet wanted to be able to support the Dilbert application, it couldn't in good conscience go ahead and do what the Leader of the Opposition wants, and that is take a shot in the dark and approve it without understanding what the consequences would be, without understanding what the potential liability would be on the government of this country if the concerns are real and the kinds of damage come to pass that could occur based on the analysis by the Department of Environment. Now, Madam Speaker, the channel, we understand, is a part, that's the only part of the Coastal Works application. But the channel goes somewhere. And we know that it is a part of a proposal to truncate the south side road of Little Cayman, to go into the Marina Basin, into the western half of the saltwater pond, where the applicant proposes, through a separate application, through planning and the Development and Control Board in Cayman Brac, to apply for planning permission. And that, in and of itself, is a process that I understand has begun, but it is being held up for a variety of reasons which have nothing to do with government. In fact, well, not go there. But a part of that issue, Madam Speaker, is once the Development Control Board, or if, let's say, the Development Control Board were to approve the application that the Dilberts have made, then a separate application has to come to government to get approval from government through the Cabinet to go ahead and dredge this pond, because it is Crown property. It belongs to the people of the country. So we have to exercise a decision in the best interests of the people of the country in that respect as well. Now, Madam Speaker, I know that there was some confusion, it seems. I've seen media references to statements by the Dilberts that government had given approval to actually do this dredging. Madam Speaker, I can tell you that that hasn't happened. There is, I know, an application to the Development Control Board in respect of that. But that is, at this point, also going nowhere, because they, as I understand from the planning department, are waiting on Mr. Dilbert to decide that he wants to proceed. In the same way, Madam Speaker, the government, the Cabinet, my ministry, is waiting for Mr. Dilbert to tell the ministry that it's going to proceed with his environmental impact assessment. Now, I've heard public statements by Mr. Dilbert that he will now pay for an environmental impact assessment, yet the Leader of the Opposition comes here this afternoon, Madam Speaker, and says that he's going to only pay for a part of it. Madam Speaker, it's been made quite clear to the applicant that in the same way that any other applicant in Cayman would have to pay for an environmental impact assessment for a project which they propose, this is going to be no different. The government does not have the funds to pay for an environmental impact assessment, and it is not the responsibility of the government because this is not a government project. So, Madam Speaker, we have heard nothing further from the Dilbert, officially, Mr. Dilbert, on what he wants to do in relation to an environmental impact assessment. His application to the DCB in Cayman Brac in respect of the dredging of the pond, as I said, has gone nowhere at this point because they're waiting to hear from him as to what he wants to do. Now, it may be the case that the Leader of the Opposition is advising him not to do anything at this point because he wants to come and bring another motion, yet another motion to this House to truncate the normal process and to undermine the established and practiced process through Cabinet for a coastal works application, which exists by virtue of Section 23 of the Marine Conservation Law. Madam Speaker, it is very unfortunate that we have a situation where two other applications have been received and two other applications were considered on their merits and on the characteristics and on the information provided, and the information provided was more than sufficient to reach the conclusions that were reached, that it was possible to support an approach like this to try to support some sustainable development in the Brac, to try to get some activity there following and in accordance with the wishes of the people of Cayman Brac. They felt, the Department of Environment felt that they were in a position, based on all of that, to advise Cabinet that it could safely proceed to approve these, subject to the conditions that the recommendations which they made. It is just unfortunate that those applications are sufficiently different from Mr. Dilbert's application that in those cases an EIA is not, an environmental impact assessment is not required, but in Mr. Dilbert's case it is required. And the government's position, Madam Speaker, has been very consistent on this. The Cabinet took a decision to approve the Dilbert's application in principle, subject to an environmental impact assessment being carried out. Mr. Bush, the Leader of the Opposition, pardon me, Madam Speaker, the first elected member for West Bay, brought a motion weeks after the decision of Cabinet to grant this in principle approval, to try to, as I said, truncate that, to try to insist that approval be given without any conditions. Madam Speaker, as I've said, the view of the government is that that is completely an irresponsible approach and not one which any government which is practicing the good governance that any objective person can recognize in those circumstances, an appropriate process, practicing procedures that are fair to everybody, applicable to everybody. And the only way it's going to be fair to everybody is if you take a consistent approach. But the Leader of the opposition would have us simply ignore all of that, ignore the process, ignore the concerns, just grant the approval, let the chips fall where they may, let's roll the dice, let's take a shot in the dark, let's see what happens to the marine environment in Cayman Brac. Let's see what happens to the houses at the back of the saltwater pond. Ignore the fact, Madam Speaker, that we have five, Madam Speaker, and let me stress now that the other two applications had no objections. We have 5 objections to the Dilbert's application in the Brac. And, Madam Speaker, even if one of them is the National Trust, Madam Speaker, so even if we ignore that, that's still 4 more then objected to the two the two MMCB North and South Side Marina applications put together. We cannot simply ignore their concerns. They have very legitimate concerns which they have expressed to the government. They have gone through the normal processes of objecting. They've objected to the Coastal Works application process. They've objected to the Development Control Board process in respect of the application that is yet to fully proceed. They have legitimate concerns, and we can't ignore them. We owe them a duty, Madam Speaker, to at least attempt to understand exactly what the impacts will be, and that's what an environmental impact assessment is going to demonstrate. It is going to tell us whether the Department of Environment are correct in their concerns or whether Mr. Dilbert is more correct in his assessment, and whether there's any potential way to mitigate any of those concerns. Those people are concerned about having a direct access to the ocean with no barrier in between them. There will be a breakwater. All that's going to do is stop some of the wave energy that comes in from the southeast, Madam Speaker. That's going to do nothing for tidal surges during even moderate hurricanes.
What about the wall inside the marina? They're not putting up a wall there? No?
Not a part of any application I've seen.
No? They're not putting up a wall?
Madam Speaker, I have heard from the applicant that they were proposing to put some kind of riprap around the edge of the shore. But Madam Speaker, I don't think that they are proposing to put, and I don't think the landowners on the other side who have legitimate concerns want to have an 8-foot wall in front of their property, or the back of their property, depending on how you look at it. They have a legitimate expectation to enjoy their property in peace without having to worry about tidal surges from hurricanes that wouldn't ordinarily breach the storm ridge, but coming in through this significant channel and flooding the areas. And it's going to be an issue, obviously, for the applicant with his hotel as well. But these people have legitimate concerns. Mr. Dilbert can concern himself with his own property as the applicant. But these are third parties. They have concerns about this, and we cannot simply ignore them. It is irresponsible, Madam Speaker, to simply ignore them. So, Madam Speaker, I think I've outlined at least the facts that there is no way you can compare these three applications and say they're the same, that they have the same effects, and that any conditions that are relevant to approvals in respect of them should be the same. I think any reasonable person, Madam Speaker, can see that, they can understand that. And as I said, Madam Speaker, these documents are all in the public domain. You can go on CNS website, they have them all attached there. You can see all the Coastal Works reviews for the three different applications. You can see the differences between these three applications. Madam Speaker, I think the only travesty we have going on here is the travesty of an attack being made on normal process by the leader of the opposition. We have a process which has served us well, and we have decisions which are being made, which are made against objective recommendations and based on science, based on the evidence, based on the calculation of impacts and volumes. And they demonstrate that all three of these applications are substantially different. And the one that creates the most concern is the Dilbert application. The one that has the environmental impact imposed by Cabinet, and which was imposed again when the Leader of the Opposition tried to bring his resolution to truncate the process in Cayman Brac. It was imposed then as well. But we are not proceeding with environmental impact, not because of government. So, Madam Speaker, I think there's not much more that I can say in respect of this. I think we have demonstrated, and we will continue to address this if we have to, because it seems that certainly the Leader of the Opposition is intent on taking forward his approach, his substance over process approach, which he has become known for the last number of years now. But we have to have a process. We have to have a process because it's the only way we can arrive at reasonable decisions, at rational decisions, at fair decisions. There has to be consistency, there has to be fairness. We have to follow the normal process. And the normal process, Madam Speaker, was followed in this case. The concerns are legitimate, and therefore the requirement and the conditions which have been imposed on these applications, all of them are legitimate. Madam Speaker, we went against the advice of the OE. Cabinet went against the advice of the OE in relation to approving this. That alone demonstrates that what the Leader of the Opposition is saying is nonsense.
Madam Speaker, the member has traversed this ground about a dozen times this evening. How much longer is he going to keep repeating himself over and over? Have you got nothing else to say?
Madam Speaker?
You've said that several
Leader
times.
of the Opposition, are you bringing it under standing order of relevance?
Yes, Madam Speaker, repetition.
I'm wrapping up, Madam Speaker, but it is just for emphasis because the Leader of the Opposition
Honourable
doesn't
Minister,
seem to
please
understand.
continue.
So, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I draw your attention that the member understands an order that deals with relevance, that deals with repetition, that the member had traversed this ground several times this evening. This is about 5 times he's repeated that.
Again, Madam Speaker,
Honourable Minister, please continue.
I apologize. As I said, Madam Speaker, I was simply wrapping up at that time. And I will simply say that appropriate decisions were made following a proper process, an established process, one in accordance with the law. And decisions were made which Cabinet felt were in the best interests of the country, the community of Cayman Brac, and reflected the appropriate levels of concerns that had been expressed to it, and took and reflected the right level of responsibility which government feels and Cabinet feels that it has as guardians of the natural assets of this country, yet who have to make decisions to support and get the balance right in respect of sustainable development in this country. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the third elected member from the district of West Bay.
Madam Speaker, when I first met with the Dilbert family, when this first came to light, there was a few things that I asked them. And I'm happy to say that they answered, and some of it was corroborated by the minister that just spoke. And last week, I think it was, on one of the radio stations, and having spoken to the Dilberts, and he just repeated the same thing again. And what the minister stated was, DOE did not meet, make recommendations, or coach the other applicant at any time during the process. Madam Speaker, I have 2 documents here, Coastal Works Review, one South Marina, one North Marina, that will be put on the table that the public and the members here can go through them. Going through these documents, I'll touch on the north one first, Madam Speaker, on page 3. And
Are you wishing to lead him at this stage?
yes, ma'am.
So ordered.
Both documents, ma'am. The DOE on page 3 says the DOE's review of the associated planning application in December 2013 recommended amendments to the siting of the basin with a view to increasing the setback of the basin from the high water mark in order to minimize wave overtopping and increase the effectiveness of this as a safe harbor. Madam Speaker, these recommendations don't seem to even have been taken on board. On the other document, the South Marina Coastal Works Review, page 3, it once again says, recommendations will be provided to alter the design of the scheme to address and mitigate as far as possible the more significant environmental concerns. On page 4, it says, we believe that the extent of this impact could be mitigated through a modification to the dredging footprint. It also, Madam Speaker, went on to provide an altered version of applicants' submitted proposal with recommended highlighting areas not to be dredged. It's right in that document there. So when the minister says, and this is one of the few reasons I got up to speak, it because he clearly stated it again just now. Then it says, also made references that there was an updated version of plans that existed outside the submitted versions. It's in that document on the South Marina. How did they know that updated copies existed before their initial report? Why were their plans updated in the first place? Who recommended to them to change it? Because the minister clearly stated that DOE did not meet, make recommendations, or coach the other applicant at any time. When I asked the Dilberts if any such recommendations, Madam Speaker, were given or discussed with them, the answer was no. In one report, the Coastal Works Review recommended that we no longer waste our time with any further applications. And Madam Speaker, this is why I stand today. I agree with the minister when he says to get the environmental impact assessment done. And I've told the Dilberts that. But tell me, but let's step back a second, Madam Speaker. Let us assume that the minister is unaware of what is going on in his house, since he said that there was no coaching or anything going on. Maybe then it's DOE, because I've already seen a letter where 3 weeks after the application, where it was said that trying to find out if there was a turtle nesting spot where they wanted to cut. Madam Speaker, I've been to that area. I've been on that, right behind that area there, and believe you me, no turtle will nest in that area. But they tried 3 weeks after to get staff members to say that there wasn't, after they'd already put it in their report. So, Madam Speaker, another thing that I noticed that didn't seem right, or didn't sound right, when I saw the Dilbert thing, I saw 1.5 acres, whereas on the South Marina is 1.8 acres. And they just said it was so much bigger than the South Marina. Madam Speaker, why I stand today is to show that the fairness that we Caymanians want in this country, for some reason we can't get it, Madam Speaker. I have no problem with the minister and DOE asking the Dilberts for environment, but do it for the next person. And the fact that the next set of people are not even Caymanian makes it even worse. Is it that we are going to, in our own country, everything has to be harder for us Caymanians? I remember standing and hearing the member from East End say this in one of his speeches lately. Everything Cayman seems to be harder, or not enough value put to it. And that's the part of why I stand here today. Obviously, looking at those two documents, if the members can't see that someone was coached or recommended, people are blind. The documents are there for everyone to see. And Madam Speaker, that's all I'm saying. What the Dilberts were asked to do should have been done with other people, not someone giving their opinion. Simple. What is good for a Caymanian should be good for someone from the outside. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the honourable member from the District of East End.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I shall not keep you long. Madam Speaker, I listened to the Minister expound on the process through which these applications were vetted. And I too would like to confirm that I believe those processes need to remain in place. We cannot put ourselves in a position of truncating those processes. All and sundry must be subject to such processes in this country. And I'm glad that we, successive governments, have tried to do that. However, Madam Speaker, one of the processes that I have difficulty with has been that this legislature in Cayman unanimously approved a motion requiring the establishment of a committee to review the Dilbert Marina and any other projects to be given similar treatment, i.e. review. To my knowledge, that committee has not been formed. It may have been formed subsequent to these approvals being granted. Now, Madam Speaker, I have fears for that. I really believe Cabinet should have waited until those considerations had been completed before reviewing or considering an application for coastal works license for any of those marinas, for all three of them. The three of them should have waited until the wishes of Cayman Brackers through that committee could have been reviewed. As all members know, I am a stickler for the integrity of this Parliament, for maintaining the integrity of this Parliament. And I trust that in the future, this government will not, or for that matter, any government, will not plow along without considering the wishes of this Parliament, whether I'm here or someone else is here, whether either of us are here, any of us are here, or there's a whole new Parliament. It is important that we respect the wishes of this Parliament. Madam Speaker, after Finance Committee, in Finance Committee, I requested that we see the applications and all the recommendations and the like that went along with these applications. Now, Madam Speaker, the following 2 days, I believe we met early in the morning, and the minister presented us with the 3 bundles of application forms and recommendations and the like. However, during the Finance Committee, when I questioned as to the reason for the Coastal Works license on the North and South Marina, that was the 2 for MMCB Limited, I was told that Cabinet had no knowledge of what was going to be the plan part of whatever the project was. Cabinet was only concerned and had only concerned themselves with, or itself, with the Coastal Works license. So I thought that was one of those bridges into nowhere too. Having reviewed this documentation, it is obvious that the proposal, especially on the north side of the MMCB Limited proposals, the one on the north side, there is extensive work to be done. For some reason, Madam Speaker, I got the impression that it was the old Buccaneering location. I was wrong. It is east of that. And extensive work based on what I saw, what I have seen in this application. But it was obvious that, and I hope I'm not wrong in saying it was obvious, that all of this was delivered to Cabinet because it was given to us, and I can only assume that this is Cabinet material, what was submitted to Cabinet for its consideration. Madam Speaker, whilst I was told that consideration of the upland is that of the Development Board of Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, I certainly believe that Cabinet has jurisdiction there also, and that had to be a consideration of this overall development. Personally, I'm not convinced that the one on the north side is going to be operational or that it's going to be a feasible manner of getting boats in and out of the large lagoon that I see that needs to be dug, which will extract hundreds, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of cubic yard of material. And on the other marina on the south side, I am concerned myself about that one. When we are talking about digging that channel, digging that area out 8 feet deep, when the channel that transports, that would be used to transport the boats from that is the channel in the sound there, from the entry channel through the reef at Brack Reef, if there is not 8 feet of water there. And I doubt there is. The minister said there's 9 feet. Well, I guess. But it's certainly a narrow channel coming through there. And there may be need to dig that out also. Now, Madam Speaker, the department personnel spoke of the sedimentation that we are going to create there with an excavator being on top of a barge. And that is correct. But whilst they do not support, or they don't have a lot of confidence in silk screens, the deployment of silk screens for the Dilbert's marina or proposal, so too will we have the same problem with the sediment escaping from the south side and going over the reef, wherein we have the marine park and the dive sites as well. I'm not convinced that it won't, because why I say that, Madam Speaker, is that, Madam Speaker, your good self knows that I have been trying for years now to get a boat ramp in East End, and the reason they have refused it is because they said the silk screen is going to allow the sediment to go out of the immediate area. Now, if it got do it in East End, that means it got do it in Cayman Brack too. Same water, same kind of turbidity, same kind of currents on the inside as up in the Middle East then. So we got to stop coming up with little excuses and little reasons to justify our ends. We got to stop that. But Madam Speaker, the minister gets up here and the department, and they give us the technical aspects of these things. Madam Speaker, my view is that whilst that is important to determine where we go, how we go, what we do, our speculation on what will happen, all the technical aspects are very important. You really think people listen then to the word bathymetry? I don't even know what it means. That's not so, but I know. But that was tongue-in-cheek, Madam Speaker. What I'm concerned about, Madam Speaker, is right now, as we speak, there is a pond in Cayman Brack. It is dry. It is creating maggots. It has shut down a little boutique hotel with 30 rooms, 20 people out of work. And it has become a nuisance, a public nuisance. And who is it owned by? We are missing that, Madam Speaker. That's what we're missing. I don't need to hear the technical aspect of these things. The people of Cayman Brack want results. They want the government to do something about the land that they have there that is a nuisance to them. You want to tell Cleveland them you're not approving them using the government land? Tell them so. But you solve the problem. You must solve the problem. If it was a private person, private proprietor, you would have the police there, you would have public health there, you would have the Department of Environmental Health, you would have the DOE there. Because it is not creating rodents doesn't mean that it's not a nuisance. The obnoxiousness of that pond is a nuisance to a whole nation. It is a national disaster, and it should be considered by the 7 members of cabinet a national embarrassment. And I ain't letting the Attorney General or the Deputy Governor off, they're in there too. And the Governor. I trust that they will be ashamed of themselves enough or concerned enough to correct it. We got 20 people sitting down out of jobs in a poor economy. Cayman Brac is even worse off than us in many instances. And we do nothing about it? And the minister asks me, how long? Well, let me tell you how long. It has forever been so. And when I tried to correct it by pumping water into it on a flotation device system, I was shut down. Your challenge is to find out who shut me down. That's a challenge I throw to you, Minister.
Who shut you down? I seen people talk about good process. Good process, you would know good process if it's rapid.
In the meantime, we are telling the Dilberts that they can't bridge the shore. Why? Because the study that was provided is insufficient. The application is insufficient in evidence to support they need more evidence to support their application. And by the way, you are going, if we were to approve this, your upland intent is not suitable either. But we never considered the upland for the other two. We didn't think about those. But the Dilberts, who are as indigenous Cayman Brackers as them parrots on that bluff. Madam Speaker, I don't want to get into this. Me, them, us, we, them. I don't want to go there. But Madam Speaker, this government should try to facilitate the Dilberts. It is your problem. Your land is creating a nuisance, a national nuisance. Help facilitate the Dilberts getting something done about it. I don't care what it is. There are interim measures we can use, at least that the little hotel can stay open. I'm not worried about the Dilberts, how much they can make off it. My concern is the 20 Cayman Brackers that are out of work or whatever they are, whether the Cayman Brackers are affiliated with Cayman Brac or married up there, whatever they are. Madam Speaker, twice I have been there. And I was pleasantly surprised with the the little hotel. I didn't know, a little small hotel could be run so efficiently and so clean and the what have you and what have. I guess that's why, because of the size. But I don't hold any affinity for the Dilberts. Far be it. It's not my job. They're not my bosom friends. But you know what they are? Caymanians. That's what they are. And if they were from the point of West Bay to the Bluff and Cayman Brac, that's what they are. I can't get away from that. We have reached a point where maggots are coming out, not of the Dilbert's Hotel, coming out of government land and destroying a Caymanian business. And we are sitting down here talking about bathymetry and the technical this and the technical that. What are we doing to alleviate the problem? Why don't somebody from the government go and sit down with the Dilberts? Sure, Madam Speaker, everybody in this country know the Dilberts are assertive business people. But you think they get what they got? But we need to remove that for a minute. Let's talk about what needs to be done, how we can deal with this. This approach that we have of if you say something, I gotta counter you with something better. Sometimes we gotta back off. Look at what has happened because of this bucking of heads between government and a Caymanian family. Is that why government has been created? No, Madam Speaker. No. That's not why government was created. Government was created to help its people. We tend to feel like our job is to prevent people from doing things. Our job is to facilitate them getting to where they need to be and to fulfilling their dreams. I am not saying go and do things that are that has never been done before just to facilitate. Let us see what we can do. At the very least, Madam Speaker, there are interim measures that could have been put in place by the government. We have a sufficient technical people that we could have put measures in place in the interim so the hotel didn't shut down until we deal with what we had to deal with and go and have dialogue with these people. Look like we're hell-bent on shutting down the hotel. Is there some ulterior motive? What is it? What we want him to do or them to do? Go up there and use their mouth to get water out of the sea and suck it up and car across the road and spit it out and go back and make the trip back and forth? It's our land. It's for us. Let us do something about it. It's no longer under the protected. Pump some salt water in it. I am. Madam Speaker, maybe, I don't know why I get so worked up over these things. Losing my voice now? I don't know. Madam Speaker, I agree with the minister. It looks like the cabinet went against the wishes of other recommendations of the OE, the technocrats. But I hope that wasn't an excuse so that others could get approved. Because on the north one, the recommendation by Mr. Tim Austin under recommendation, comments and recommendations, and I read in one section of it, Madam Speaker, I think you have it. The application would benefit considerably from an evidence-based assessment for the need and economic viability of the proposal. The department recommends that the cabinet request this additional information from the applicant in order to allow cabinet to reach an informed decision regarding the economic and social merits of this application, balanced against the predicted environmental impacts. Now, I want to know why that wasn't done. Why wasn't that done? What do we think an EIA is? That's the same thing. And the South one had identical recommendations. And then they recommend that Dilbert don't be given any, and the government gave it, but gave it in principle for an EIA, with an EIA. The other ones were approved without any conditions. I think, off mic, I spoke to the minister, but the cover letters does not indicate that there are any conditions attached. And he has said to me that when the license are issued, it will be reflected therein. However, if I was the applicant, I would challenge it, because the letter to MMCD Limited on the 27th of May says, please be advised that Cabinet has approved the issuance of a coastal work license, the license to MMCD Limited to construct a boat channel and 2 flushing channels to provide navigable access and improve water quality for the creation of a proposed inland marine basin and marina development located on Block 95, blah, 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 on the north side of Cayman Block. Please note that the approval is valid for a period of 1 year from the date of this letter. Cabinet further advised that royalty mitigation and administrative money fees in the sum of $65,216 will be levied. All fees should be made payable to the Cayman Islands government prior to the issuance of the license. Now, if you go and put on conditions other than what the applicant applied for, then that can't be fair. What are you doing, the drawings? You have done new drawings or what? Is that how it works? Because as I know, the issuance of coastal works license, you defer it and tell them you're not doing it in the manner that you have submitted. Madam Speaker, you've been in cabinet much longer than I have. But if you approve it, that means it is with the plans that have been submitted, in accordance with the plans that have been I don't know if they deferred it first and then got new plans. I don't know what Why the rush? Why was the rush to get this done? I don't know whether no or not no. Getting into that. Madam Speaker, the minister said it wasn't a rush. Cleveland was signed on the 10th of December 2013. His letter was April. CB's application was signed the 1st of October, January the 10th, 2014. And May the 27th, the letter was issued. Well, obviously, Madam Speaker, the minister is saying basically the same period. Why didn't we? I don't know, Madam Speaker, what goes on in cabinet. I didn't hear the minister say that in any of his deliberations or utterances that he deferred it 2-3 times until he got it back the way the cabinet wanted. I didn't hear that. Now, if I didn't hear it, I can assume that they went ahead with the application that as presented. What am I to assume anything else? When the minister has had much public appearances with this subject. He has a right to inform the public. He has a need to inform the public. But most of all, he has a need to facilitate the public in this country to ensure that they don't go astray in whatever they do. Madam Speaker, I believe it's fair, and I believe it would be considered reasonable by the people of this country if government rescinds the approval which was for Mr. Dilbert, and stop the technical thing about the groins and the this and the that and the water circulation, because we worried about his upland, but we're not worried about anybody else's upland business development. Rescind the letter of 30 April 2014, which says, please be advised that Cabinet granted approval to the application in principle for a coastal works license. Rescind it. Madam Speaker, we have to understand that we have turned the Dilberts into victims by what we are doing here, when the real culprit of this whole thing just happens to be the pond that the government owns. The only reason the Dilberts wants to do what they want to do is because the pond is disturbing them. And that's their solution, and that's their answer to a solution.
Correct.
Rescind the letter. Go to Cabinet Tuesday. Tuesday not far away. Rescind the agreement. Withdraw the agreement. Sit down with these people. Stop creating enemies in our own Caymanians. Stop using the big stick Madam Speaker, I'm reminded of when I was a minister and I offered a landowner $20 for their property when we were building the road, and the court, they took me to court, and the court offered them $16.40, I think, awarded them $16.40, and they had 3 weeks to appeal to the Grand Court. And 3 months later, I get a writ saying that the appeal was on. And I said, but this can't be right. The judge can't allow someone 3 months after the fact to file a writ against me. You know what I was told? Government cannot be seen to be using the big stick over its citizens. Okay? They lost 3 weeks. 3 months later, the court allowed it. Government cannot be seen. That was my lesson in learning, my friend. Now let it be yours. Government cannot be seen to be using the big stick that we hold over our citizens. It creates all kinds of foolishness. Hate, unpatriotism, animosities, anarchy. Help our citizens. That's all we need to do. No one, Madam Speaker, is going to crucify a government for helping its people. Help facilitate them. Yeah, sometimes they got to be unreasonable. We know that. But sometimes government can be unreasonable too. And I think we are now. I think this is a clear case of being totally unreasonable and not helping to facilitate an establishment that we all agree has served a good purpose in Cayman. Make them dig out here, pit old pond. I don't support digging out half it anyhow. I think we should go east of Coral Isle and come in there and dig the whole thing out. Anything can be done. I know the landowners on the other side are concerned, Madam Speaker, and I share their concern. I share that too. You think I would want to be next to something that hitherto had no potential of flooding my house? Of course not. But Madam Speaker, anything can be mitigated. It can be mitigated because I can tell you what, Madam Speaker, on my most recent visit during Parliament, water can come over that road there and go straight in that pond. This is a perfect time now to help mitigate all that along that side. Let's try to do something. You know, my cousin, Madam Speaker, who I served 4 or 8 years in here with, the Honorable Dr. Linford Pearson, always told me that you can catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And I offer that to the minister as it was taught to me. Pour the honey. And we know, Madam Speaker, your good self, you work with my cousin, and the leader of the opposition has worked with him for a long time, and we know how much friends he used to get with the honey coming out the corner of his mouth. He always presented himself in that manner to facilitate the people. Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition is anxious to speak, so my plea to the government is to rescind this thing, sit down, but go with a clean mind. This preconceived position that it should not be done. Technically, it cannot be done. Anything can be done. Let's see what we can do to facilitate Cayman Brac. That's all. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I'll recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
No, I'll do that. Madam Speaker, once again, we get an indication that the government is using their majority to stifle what I think is an easy way out of this if the government wanted to do something. The member from East End saying that, look, government needs to do something. But they are not willing, because as much as you hear the minister got up there just now talking about how much they want to help. If they wanted to help, Madam Speaker, you don't think that this would be done by now? This government, who has found every excuse under the sun to do any and everything that they have been done so far. I often say, Madam Speaker, I wish to God that I had gone to a school that they went to, the school of excuses, because ain't nobody, again, has found good excuses as much as them. And it's all because they can pull the big stick out of their members, a big stick, not out only the people, but out their members, and using them as extension cords. Madam Speaker, I listened to the minister and his usual thing, and that's usually how most of the PPM operate. You heard it from the premier, and now that minister is doing the same thing, is to get up and blame Makiwa, and they think that is it. But the people, this is not 2013. People are wide awake and seeing differently. They understand, Madam Speaker, what this government is all about, because they have stepped away from everything that they had promised the people, that the people care about. Madam Speaker, the minister went on and on about process. He found all the excuses. They support, but this was such of a huge scale in comparison to the other two, and on he went. They thought they could say what the negatives were, Madam Speaker, but obviously there were a bias and outright attempts to stop the Dilbert. So they can't say that they were balanced in this. The minister knows that, but of course he has to talk because he himself did not support this. He didn't support this. Firstly, Madam Speaker, he says that the Dilberts did not respond to some letter that they had written. But did he not know that the Deputy Premier had told the Dilberts they didn't need to respond to the letter? He didn't know that? You tell me which letter it was. I know which letter it was. You understand that? Or he didn't know that, Madam Speaker. Didn't he know? Didn't he know that? Well, that's what happened. The Deputy Premier, the Minister for Cayman Brac, said, no, you don't have to respond to this. So on and on he goes. They said they didn't do any coaching. There was no cooperation between them. But who do you really think they're talking to? Everything points to the cooperation that has been going on, Madam Speaker. This thing that he comes up with, that I was trying to truncate the good process, that I was trying to overstep the good process that has gone on for years. Well, if there is this good process which has gone on for years that the minister keep talking about, he used that word so often and gave that example, I had to get up, Madam Speaker, not that it did any good. Madam Speaker, where is the good process that has gone on for years? I outlined the process for years that the DOE always stuck to until this government comes in. All the things that they stuck to, you, Mr. Minister, is party to changing the good process. Where is the EIA, the Environmental Impact Assessment, that the DOE always asks for the two marinas? Where is it? Always, and when you come to do any kind of dredging, any kind of canal, those persons in 99.9 of the cases ask for it. You know, Madam Speaker, his sense of good process is a very skewed process. That's what's happening to him. On, he went to, firstly, Madam Speaker, he goes out to point, you didn't do anything. We doing it all. They can help do a lot if they would do it. But they're being choosy about who they help and who they protect. What I did? Well, I did what they asked me to do to make sure that the hotel was open in 2009. And I worked to make sure that our tourism grew to where it is at 12%, highest ever over the last 10 years. And we were the ones who removed the designation. But that's what up there crawl. So don't come talking about what I did. When you do as much as I've done for Cayman Brack, then you have time to talk and time to point fingers. But you're not going to do nothing for Borden Town, much less Cayman Brack. Shot in the dark? I don't think so, Madam Speaker. And liability for the government? Where is it? What is this liability that he flings out trying to frighten people? What is it? Where is it? What is the liability? I am trying to stop some process, Madam Speaker, because I see a problem that I believe that they can fix immediately if they sit down together and change it. But they don't support it. They want to make the family believe that they support it. They will allow daily to make them believe that they support it. But they haven't done anything to support it. What have they done? Except now to come and say that I am trying to stop the process of cabinet. Madam Speaker, I'm not trying to do that. Cabinet, who will have to grant the go-ahead, if they was willing to go ahead, then they would find a way to do it. And that's what I want you to do. I want Cabinet to take our say-so here as they did up there, although this minister is willing in his pompousness to come and say that they don't need to do anything that this House has agreed on. That's where the bad process is and the bad governance. If this government was willing to help, go ahead and do something then about it. Help them. Objections. How many objections, Madam Speaker? You heard him first. I mean, you would have thought that there were the whole Cayman Brack objecting to that. But is that so? Again, he like the premier comes half-cocked. Baked, half-baked opposition. You do know that you must be on all fours. What objections? 4 he claims. Well, all I know is about is 2. 4 objections, whereas, Madam Speaker, there are several hundred of persons who signed a petition agreeing to the development of that marina. Hundreds of people, because they know they live there. And if the Dilberts didn't care about Cayman Brac, why would they develop it? Why would they go there and spend their money? If they was not concerned, why, Madam Speaker, would they go build that hotel? If they were so unconcerned and wasn't going to do the proper thing, whose property would be exposed but the Alexander? Because that sits right there. Wouldn't it be exposed? You don't think that they got that much sense to know that? But yet the minister wants to point his finger to say they don't care or I don't care? No, that hotel. You don't think you can work me up. You just come here. You see? You don't know how to think that how I am animated, that you is pushing me into anything. If that's what you feel, you and the premier is coming out the same bag. And I think that both of them, Madam Speaker, with their attitudes, if you put them in a sack and shake together, you don't know which one falling out first. With the pompousness that they exhibit. Substance over process now, Madam Speaker. You know what? He can say what he likes, but the truth is that McKeever Bush is a realistic and practical person. I don't care who they are. I am fair. I believe in fairness. I don't care who you are. But that's not what the minister is doing. He certainly is very skewed. Madam Speaker, I come into some things that I need to come to, but I want to get to him to tell him this. Don't come pointing his finger at me about cronyism or nepotism. He needs to go to history to talk about cronyism and nepotism. He suggests I know all about it. I am well aware about historical fact. And he shouldn't go pointing fingers at me. But that's how people like him got elected. Because there are people who don't know. But let me tell him that Caymanians are there who do. And he shouldn't talk. And when he find out who I helped or assisted, that he can point a finger at me, he needs to let me know. He needs to let me know. I can tell him about good process not being followed, because were it not for people like McKeever Bush and Cabinet, there would have been some heads rolling for overcharges against good governance and proper process. I hope he remembers and he understands. I didn't come here yesterday. I castigated no one, Madam Speaker, when he comes here accusing that I castigated the minister. I castigated no one. I spoke the truth that there was an application existing with a down payment on the piece of land on the south side where the marina is to be built. A down payment with the minister's company for a family piece of land that is being sold or was sold. That when we were discussing that proposal, that agreement existed in the minister's company. So he was quick to try and point his finger at me. But what I have just said, Madam Speaker, is not wrong. No, it isn't. It's not cronyism or nepotism and bad governance. No, no, no. Not for them. But that's why I had to ask a while ago, when is the slave mentality, the Brockra attitude going to change? Where no matter how bad it is good for some, but the same treatment is wrong for others. when people like him would think otherwise.
Madam Speaker, on a point of order.
Please state your point of order. Member from Bontown.
This member referred to slave attitude or mentality or something twice now, and I take extreme offense to that, and I would ask you to please ask him to stop. Well, you're referring to a slave attitude that members on this side seem to have, and that is highly offensive and is racial in nature, and I'd ask you to stop.
Thank you, member. By virtue of Standing Order 35. 3, it is out of order to use offensive or insultive language about other members. I would ask the Honourable Leader of the Opposition to craft his statements in a manner that would not be in contravention or would cause an insult to members. The member from Bontown has taken offense and that he believes you're imputing that perhaps he had it, and so maybe you want to clarify that if you were not imputing
Madam
to him.
Speaker.
But please, can I just kind of finish next? The night is going on. The debate is almost finalized, and I would just ask you to be very careful not to breach that, so we won't have these interventions. We can continue with the debate at a high level.
Madam Speaker, history is what it is. It's what it is in this country. And some people don't want to recognize it for what it is. But I say the attitude exists. And I don't take nothing about racial overtones for nothing. Didn't want nothing blacker or more colored than my grandfather and my family. No, you don't. And they came out of, let me give you the history a little bit. They came out of Westmoreland many years ago. And they crossed the Atlantic and they made it cross. But I'm happy about that. So don't come talking about racial overtones, McKee. We don't get into that. I don't get it, but I do speak the fact. And the fact is that there are people in this country, the slave mentality being that there are people who are better off. I am the slave, you're the slave, you are the slave, the next one is the slave, but there are masters that are better than the slave. That's what we're talking about. So we're not calling anybody slaves up in here. Maybe some masters. Madam Speaker, so don't get with that. People who come and raise that kind of stuff have a problem, you know. They really do. They really do raise them kind of objections. Because if he listened to what the things that I've talked about, when he heard me, he would understand that I am not talking about slaves as such or castigating slaves as such. When is there going to be, Madam Speaker, a situation where some people believe that they are better than others? That's what you talk about, the slave mentality. And I thought that my debate, Madam Speaker, is very appropriate, if I should say so, to you and the rest of them in this House. Madam Speaker, let's examine...
Leader of the Oppositions, the Chair has not now or ever indicated that your debate was not appropriate. I was taking a point of order from the member because he understood it that you were imputing or abusing him personally about the slave mentality. You have explained your position, and hence the reason I've given the indication to continue.
Okay. I hope that one and all understands that. Let's examine, Madam Speaker, these environmental impact comparisons. The Department of Environment, the minister, probably being part of that, stated in their document that works will be completed in a marine park. Now, let's take the differences. Let's take the comparison. While there is a marine park where the Dilbert Marina would be situated, it shouldn't be so perceived, though it is a marine park, like what's on the north side, where the important dive sites are. It is not the same thing. It's not an area that hosts a significant amount of marine life. It certainly is not considered a pristine area, and it should not be received as though the area is filled with coral reef and estuaries of fish, because it's not so. The videos show you that. It don't exist. On the North Marina, when you take the comparison, is also constructed within a marine park, different than Dilbert's, Madam Speaker, because there will be that digging will take place in that marine park with 6 close by dive sites and 3 very important and most popular ones. On the South Marina, the proposal is located within the South Coast Lagoon inshore of a marine park, offshore to an area identified by DOE as having some of the healthiest coral reef in Cayman Brac. Look at their document. I believe that DOE, from what I remember too, is actively proposing that that lagoon become a marine park. I don't know if they would ever get that agreed. So what is he talking about? Giving some comparison to the Wicksville dock, that's the Wicksville lagoon or landing, Madam Speaker. Not the same thing. That's all I ensure going right out into deep water. Deep water. You're not talking about 6 foot, Madam Speaker. You're not talking about 6 foot when you go off. They're right alongside there. Ensure you got 20 feet. And you're going off, you can bring a cruise ship right alongside there. In fact, that's where we intended to put the cruise ship around in that area. So that's not the same thing. He want to make people, and tourists don't go swimming in there. People don't go there to swim, Madam Speaker. That wasn't dug out for swim. That was so that we had, on days that weather is on south of us, is bad on the south side, we could mostly get in down on Wicksville. That's what that was all about. They talked about the materials to be removed. And the DOE said that the works will result in the permanent removal of a significant quantity of living coral reef resources, including fringing reef and hard bottom communities. Well, the Dilbert Marina, which I understand they presented a video to caucus, the PPM caucus, proving the area in the path of and surrounding the proposed channel is a near lifeless environment with no live coral. They showed that to you all, didn't they? And it equates to 1.5 acres. And there is the shingle reef there. On the north, equates a little bit less, to 0.5. Then they go on, and when they talk about that there was no coaching, they never got together on it, the minister is talking rubbish and not telling the truth either. Because when they came to the turtle nesting part of it, Madam Speaker, which the DOE said the works will require the removal of active turtle nesting beach. Madam Speaker, you grew up in Cayman Brac. You go to that area, I defend you all the time when we come to what Cayman Brac got and what you could do for Cayman Brac. You know that that area is rock. Right? You come out by Carlisle Club, that is rock. There is no beach there, no turtle nesting. DOE is supposed to have the GPS coordinates for each turtle nest found in Cayman Brac. That's what they're supposed to have. Why wasn't this data used? And Madam Speaker, when that minister gets up and talk about what people are doing and this good governance, I have this, and I want a copy because I want to lay it on the table of the House. But this is an email from one DOE employee to another after declaring that they couldn't support the project because the project was being built in a marine environment, turtle nesting area. Here is what they said. Hi, Bonnie. He is following up on a statement that appeared in our Coastal Works review that said his marine works would disturb turtle nesting. Listen carefully, Madam Speaker. He claims no one has seen a nest in that area. Are you aware of turtle nests in the beach vicinity of Saltwater Pond? I hope so. I don't think we need to supply him the GPS coordinates, because I don't think this is an issue if that's what he wants for nests relevant to his area, perhaps a mile either side. I think an approximate map of active nesting beaches is probably more appropriate, as we can claim the data set is sensitive for obvious reasons. Can you let me know as soon as possible if there are nests in the vicinity? Now, this is after putting their objection forward. The DOE puts an objection forward to say that there are turtle nests in that area. And yet they are doing this to somebody that's a businessman. That's the kind of fairness that exists in government. That's the kind of fairness that exists in that minister's ministry against their own people. This is the answer to that. He wants data from me on all turtle nests found, GPS coordinates, but I thought I just answered that. She said, I have this data, but I really hate cooperating with him in working for the marina. Directions on how to handle him, please. And I'll read it again. Hi, Bonnie. He is following up on a statement that appeared in our Coastal Works review that said his marine works would disturb turtle nesting. He claims no one has seen a nest in that area. Are you aware of turtle nests in the beach vicinity of Saltwater Pond? I hope so. Madam Speaker, I read it already. I don't need to read it again. But this emphasizes, Madam Speaker, this emphasizes the biasness that is exhibited by your ministry and its department. Who knows what else, Madam Speaker? You just had a break. You just come in here. So, Madam Speaker, where is the fairness? Where is the fairness? Madam Speaker, I have this. I would like to table it. I'd like copies so members can get one. I want to lay it on the table of this honorable House.
So ordered. As soon as the sergeant returns to the chamber, we'll ask him to accommodate that request.
But he certainly knows nothing about balance or fairness, because he does one thing for the client of the minister on the two marinas and another thing for the other, both of which parties are doing the same thing. And he got the audacity to talk about fairness and good process. This just tells you how good the process is and how fair your ministry is carrying out these kind of responsibilities against your own people. Madam Speaker, there is no breakwater. I heard him talking some foolishness about breakwater. Listen, when the ocean is going to come in, East End showed you, Barton Town showed you, South Sound showed you, the North Sound showed you. They said, Madam Speaker, all this, you need all of this mangrove, because that can stop the sea. Yeah, when that sea comes, it came over the mangrove and came and mashed up people's homes and wiped everything out. When the forces of nature is going to act, you would have to put the wall of Jericho around the Cayman Islands to stop it. And I don't know if that would. But you cannot use these kind of examples making people believe that what somebody is doing when they're spending their hard-earned money, that they are doing so wrong that they are going to destroy the country. And then you got people jumping up here talking about they insulted because I talking about Brock. Go find something to do positively. Madam Speaker, on and on I could go with this. But there are no breakwaters. I don't know what he was trying to explain, but certainly they want to use the Scott Dock to say that that's some kind of breakwater. But that's 600 or 700 or 800 feet away from where they're going, Madam Speaker. So obviously if the seas come in predominantly
from the east, I think it is, that has a lot of space, 600-700 feet. A lot of sea can come in there. No? What do you know about it? You got a boat, but that doesn't mean that you seaman, you know. I might not know, I might not be a seaman, but I know that the Scott Dock is on to the east, and I know that the prevailing winds and comes from the east. The seas come from that way most of the time. I know that. So he thinks that I shouldn't say anything because they're going to vote against this. Well, you got another mistake. You got another mistake. I don't know what you're grumbling about. I don't want to get into the silt screen and affected areas because a member, that would be covering ground and another member covered. Madam Speaker, when they talk about the storm ridge, this is what the DOE said. Breaching this protective storm ridge with a 100-foot wide channel will expose both coastal and inland properties, potential as far as the airport, through the westerly ponds, drainage basin connections to increase flood risk and storm damage from the sea. Now I heard him talking about some drain basins. I don't know who tell him about that. Madam Speaker, the Dilbert Marina, the airport is more than a half-mile away. And again, Madam Speaker, if that was a problem, do you think that they would want to do so when they have a hotel there? Of course they would protect the environment. That's why they're building the breakwater. And that's why they are going to put protective, they're going to put protection around the inside. Protected walls or protective walls on the inside. And those people haven't complained. Only one person happened to complain, and the next person complained with Carlisle. It was only two people. Madam Speaker, the member says I should have come to something. Madam Speaker, yes, the truth is I had another commitment, but I don't know that the minister could explain, you know. Well, I heard him done there a while ago. I don't know if I should have wasted the time to go. I am glad that the member from East End went, who has some engineering background. But I bet you he told them more than they could tell him. Why going to waste time with you? You don't know nothing about engineering. And why should I go to listen to them when I have evidence, Madam Speaker, that they are messing around with the documents? Why? Because that's what they were going to show me. Why? Why should I go? The truth is, I probably would have went, but I had a commitment that morning, so I couldn't go. The airport is distance away, and that on the south side is closer to the airport. I think probably runs directly across the street maybe. If the sea came from the south, it's going to flood the airport from that direction, coming through there. That is closest, right? The highway runs across the street, as I recall correctly, runs across the street from that piece of land. So, are you being fair? Are you being fair? Are you being balanced? It's not protected so far now, Madam Speaker, that area, as it would be with that breakwater. And remember this, Madam Speaker, how they have that channel is not a straight channel. And they have said that it doesn't need to be 100 feet. They were doing that for a reason. To possibly help when the cargo vessel comes up, which is a barge, they could get it in somewhere close there. They don't need to be 100 foot. I know that was one of the thought processes at one time. But they are going to build a breakwater, and that channel is curved so it gives a less impact if a wave comes in. the curved channel would break up the wave. That's what it's supposed to do. But on the North Marina, no breakwater proposed, even though they are breaching the shoreline. The airport on that side is less than 800 feet away. The only road that services the only fire station in Cayman Brac, Madam Speaker, is less than 600 feet away from what they're going to do. The only bank in Cayman Brac is less than 600 feet away. There's a public graveyard only 300 feet away. There probably will be blasting, and there's going to be digging. Madam Speaker, where's the fairness? So, as I said, no breakwater proposed, and the dock there is completely unprotected. And they have the nerve to talk about pollutants in the proposed area. When, Madam Speaker, nothing is going to take place. The marina is going to offer pump outs, sewage treatment for boats, public bathrooms, the things that boating community need, and the things that are needed for boats. If the minister went up there and his 50-foot boat, now, what happens? You pump out everything out into the ocean, right? But at least, Madam Speaker, there, Madam Speaker, they would have proper facilities. The Department of Tourism, where the Department of Tourism is promoting that area, Madam Speaker, is being promoted by the Department of Tourism for shore diving. And there's a swimming lagoon proposed adjoining the marina, Madam Speaker. Talk about the differences. That, Madam Speaker, area is considered the 7-mile beach of Cayman Brac. Swimming, kayaking, and snorkeling within the lagoon is heavily promoted by the Department of Tourism. Why aren't these same concerns being mentioned in the South Marina application? Why not? Why not? The lagoon area there is certainly known as a turtle nesting habitat. Isn't the fact this will have on turtles concerning to the department? The marina is wide open to the whole lagoon. Any large accident will be taken down current to the adjoining beaches. Madam Speaker, it's a laugh when they talk about eco-life within the pond. Must be the maggots that is existing there. Madam Speaker, I believe that that family is willing to work with the government to do what is necessary. Me, I would give them concessions. I would have, they're going to build a road. I will say, come through free. I would say, take the mile and help mitigate, or give government the mile or some of the mile or whatever. That's what I would do. I would give them concessions. But why? I don't understand. You understand that people have got endless sums of money going to produce, a huge marina where this one is not even the full extent of the whole pond. If you take some of the marinas here, I would understand if he was certain, Madam Speaker, that he could get something done, but he should go spend $200,000-$300,000, while the Department of Tourism, of Environment, and the minister is saying, we don't support it. You don't need to do it. That's what they've been told. And now he gets up there and say that they're not doing anything. How should they take the risk? Why should they take a risk of spending $200,000-$300,000, $150,000, $160,000? Why shouldn't they take that risk when your department has been so unfair, so unbalanced, so skewed to say that they don't support this and they don't need for him to do an environmental impact study? And the minister hasn't exhibited any support for it. Not the things he's been saying. Out of one side, he said one thing, and perhaps he's saying something else on the next side. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, this is the email that I'd like to lay on the table
So ordered.
and copy to members. Madam Speaker, I do believe that government can do something. I believe that they should be fair and give them, the Dilberts, a similar treatment as they gave the woman with the two marinas. The one that hires 30 people and don't have no health up until March of this year or other benefits for them. And they are not Cayman Brackers either. Everything is a work permit. I believe that the government ought to change their attitude, get off his high horse, and say, I am going to do something and come to some agreement with them to try to save the hotel and to get people back to work. That's what I'm trying to do when he's talking about I'm trying to truncate process. That's all I'm trying to do. I can tell you that we were very proud to have that hotel and to try to do anything to help it in Cayman Brack. Because you only can go one place or two places. You only got the Brack Reef, and then you got a minister who has another type of hotel. So their business can be increased, yes, but what does that do for people in work who are out of work? I wish, Madam Speaker, that I did have some powers. I would certainly give the concessions, and I would certainly give them the opportunity to go ahead. And if you wanted them to do an EIA, you would give them some assurance that they are not going to be blocked, that the department is not going to kill them, it's not going to make them pay all this money and then tell them no, because that's what they said. Madam Speaker, I don't think I can add any more at this point, but I can tell you, people in Cayman Brack not giving up on it, and they shall have my continued support because I believe it is the right thing to do.
The question is that be it therefore resolved that this Honorable Legislative Assembly consider agreeing that the marina project in Cayman Brack, known as the Dilbert Marina, inclusive of appropriate channel, be given the same agreement and approved to be developed as the two marinas approved by the Cabinet of the Cayman Islands on May 27, 2014. One on the north side of Cayman Brack and one on the south side of Cayman Brack. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no.
No.
I believe the noes have it.
Madam Speaker, can I have a division, Madam Speaker?
Madam Clerk, please call a division.
Honorable Alden McLaughlin,
No.
Honorable Moses Kikernel, Honorable Kurt Tibbetts, Honorable Osborne Barton, Honorable Wayne Panton,
No.
Honorable Marco Archer, Honorable Tara Rivers,
No.
Honorable Anthony Eden,
Madam Speaker, as I dealt with this yesterday in the initial stage, and as Deputy Speaker, I will abstain on this.
Mr. Winston Connolly,
No.
Mr. Roy McTaggart, Mr. Joseph Hugh,
No.
Mr. Alvis Taku,
Madam Speaker, I say no to this circus. We'll resolve it some other way.
Honorable McKeever Bush,
Madam Speaker, I think this is a very good process. I doubt it's a circus. Maybe some people are clowns, but I don't see any circus rings up in the air.
Please,
and I vote aye.
Please allow the process to continue.
Mr. Barney Bush, Captain Eugene Ebanks,
Aye.
Mr. Ezra Miller, Mr. Arden McLean,
Aye.
The results of the division are as follows: 4 ayes, 7 noes, 1 abstention, and 4 absentees. The noes have it. Accordingly, the motion has failed. I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, we are not going to deal with the private members' motions. The time for private members' motions has been taken up with the 2 motions of the Leader of the Opposition, but there are 3 bills that require third readings to be able to go into effect. And I would ask, Madam Speaker, if we could proceed to do those third readings before the House adjourns.
Speaker,
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, if the member is talking about moving forward, then he just can't wipe out the private members' motions that are there. I mean, I can agree to go forward and to accommodate the government, but you have to change the order paper. You just can't say you're moving on to it.
Honorable Premier, I can draw your kind attention to Standing Order 14. If the House wishes to go that way, the House has the power to bring a motion for suspension, and then we can move on. Thank you. I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, I move that the order of business as set out in Standing Order 14 and as reflected on the current business paper be altered by the order paper by the suspension of item 5 in order that the House may proceed to government business in item 6.
The question is that Standing Order 14 be hereby suspended to allow the House to continue on to the next item of business, which is item number 6, and that items appearing under item number 5 be deferred. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. According to Standing Order 14 has been suspended. Member from Easton.
Madam Speaker, I'm just on a procedural matter. Did you say defer? Because I didn't hear the Premier say that. I thought he was using 14, 3 and 4 to rearrange the order paper, which is 4. May place notices of motions and orders of the on order paper and in order they please. That's the government. But did you say they are deferred? Deferred until when? That's the only thing I'm asking.
The next item after the third readings is the adjournment, and was indicated that we were going to conclude today. So we haven't got that indication yet, but out of the abundance of caution on this procedural point at 8:47 p.m. The question is that Standing Order 14 be suspended in order to allow the House to move on to item 6 on the order paper. Resultant effect is that item 5 would be carried over to the next meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Standing Order 14 is hereby suspended. Madam Clerk.
Third readings, government business bills, third readings. The Tax Information Authority Amendment Bill, number 2, Bill 2014.
I recognize the Honourable Minister responsible for Financial Services.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. Madam Speaker, I move that a bill shortly entitled the Tax Information Authority Amendment Number 2, Bill 2014, be given a third reading and passed. Thank you.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Tax Information Authority Amendment Number 2 Bill 2014 be given a third reading and pass. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, the Tax Information Authority Amendment Number 2 Bill 2014 has been given a third reading and is passed.
The Plants Importation and Exportation Amendment Bill 2014.
I recognize the Honourable Minister responsible for Agriculture.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, with your permission, I beg to move that the Plants Importation and Exportation Amendment Bill 2014 be given a third reading and passed.
The question is that the Plants Importation and Exportation Amendment Bill 2014 be given a third reading and pass. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. The Plants Importation and Exportation Amendment Bill 2014 has been given a third reading and is passed.
The Animals Amendment Bill 2014.
Recognize the Honourable Minister for Agriculture.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Once again, I beg to move that the Animals Amendment Bill 2014 be given a third reading and passed.
The question is that the Animals Amendment Bill 2014 be given a third reading and pass. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. The ayes have it. The Animals Amendment Bill 2014 has been given a third reading and is passed. Recognize the Honourable Premier.
Madam Speaker, I move the adjournment of this Honourable House sine die.
The question is that this Honourable House be adjourned sine die. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, this House now stands adjourned sine die.